I started 5 new book series, but the question is, which one am I already hooked on? I wanted to start a brand new book series. The problem was, I couldn't decide which one. So I pulled out 5 of my top picks, and I read them all. In this video, I'll break them down to which ones hooked me straight from the start, and which ones I'll be unhauling. Let's dive in. Will this book be divine? Will this book be twisted? Will this book be better than the movies? Will I swear this book is for you? Will this book belong in the Garden of Eden? Now, before we start, I have done some visual nods to the books throughout the video. See if you can spot them all for each book, plus the universal theme of book series. So the first book I read was Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. Divine Rivals is the first in the series Letters of Enchantment. It starts off with Iris's brother Forrest being called up into a mystical war to fight on behalf of a god named Ember. Forrest unfortunately goes missing in the war. Iris decides to take a job at a local newspaper, not only in the hope to perhaps use the resources to try and track down her brother Forrest, but because money is also a bit tight at home. Unfortunately for Iris, her rival Roman also works at the newspaper and is gunning for the exact same promotion that Iris really needs. Iris decides to start writing to her brother in the hope that somehow he will receive the letters. But it's not Forrest who receives the letters. So what are some of the good parts of the book? Enemies to lovers, anyone? Plus, who doesn't love a good old work rival? This book has what I would call an epic romance. Although obviously Iris and Roman start off as rivals, as the book progresses you really do feel the deepening of the romance and the feelings. Iris and Roman are great main characters. I definitely loved Roman as a male love interest, and that is largely in part to his actions not only towards Iris, but for Iris too. I thought the writing in the book was compelling. I liked the friendships and the other characters in the book as well. There is also a cat. So what were some of the parts that I didn't necessarily enjoy in the book? As a general rule, I don't particularly like books or films about war. Obviously it just depends on how the story is told and done, but it's also the same for gods actually. I actually really love the original myths, but I don't tend to like the books or the films based around those myths. So I feel like this book was already on the back foot for me early on. I do have to say though, while it hasn't changed my mind about those topics as storylines, I did think some of the parts were really compelling, especially some of the war scenes. There is a character whose fate is not established at the end of the book, and I genuinely had to Google it because I had to know that they were okay. If you've read the book, I'm sure you know who I mean. Here are some of my favourite quotes from Divine Rivals. Do you ever feel like you wear armour day after day? That when people look at you, they see only the shine of the steel that you so carefully encased yourself in? I think we all wear armour. I think those who don't are fools, risking the pain of being wounded by the sharp edges of the world over and over again. But if I've learned anything from those fools, it's that to be vulnerable is a strength most of us fear. It takes courage to let down your armour, to welcome people to see you as you are. Why did you take the wounds that should have been mine? Now, I will do the summaries of the books and whether I plan to continue the series on a little bit later in the video. But in the meantime, just double check you've got all the nods to the book. Also, if you do like the style of these types of videos, please do like and subscribe. It really does help out the channel. And so on to book number 2, we have Twisted Love by Huang. Twisted Love is the first in the series, Twisted. I had heard really good reviews about the book. Twisted Love centres on Ava Chen and Alex Volkov. Alex is a ruthlessly successful billionaire who has a bit of a reputation. Ava is a student, she's warm, she's happy-go-lucky, and she tends to only see the good in things. When Ava's brother has to go away, he asks his best friend, Alex, to look after Ava and just check in on her whilst he's away. So Alex, true to his word, does. And so begins the thawing of his ice-cold heart. So what were some of the parts I enjoyed about the book? We have the grumpy sunshine trope, with Alex being the grump, and Ava being the warm, sunny one. So much so that Alex actually nicknames her Sunshine in the book. You have the brother's best friend trope. Both the characters have something in their past that are actually quite major to the plot line. And don't get me wrong, whilst I don't consider them that realistic, I did like the inclusion of them in the book. If you like spice in the book, it has it in spades. And now here are some of the parts I didn't necessarily enjoy in the book. I'm more of a door-closed kind of girl in regards to spice. It does depend on how it's told, obviously, but it felt like this book from about halfway onwards was kind of just smut. And there's a lot of it as well. I definitely wasn't a fan of Alex's personality or behaviour. It's a dark romance for a reason. There were a few parts within the book where I felt like I wanted it to kind of just get there quicker. So I felt like in parts the pacing could have been improved. Here are some of my favourite quotes from Twisted Love. I didn't mind silence, I craved it. There were few things I found more irritating than incessant, pointless conversation. The weather, the latest blockbuster. Who broke up with who? Who the cared? I'm trying to save you, Ava, he said out of nowhere, right as we finished all the dishes and I prepared to flee. From what? I refused to look at him, but I could see him watching me out of the corner of my eye. From me. I didn't respond, because how was I supposed to tell the man determined to save me that I didn't want to be saved? If you wanted, I would burn down the world for you. Before we move on, make sure you have noted down all the nods to the book. And so on to book number 3, Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. I was so excited to finally be able to read this. Better Than the Movies is the first in the series, Better Than the Movies, funnily enough. Liz's childhood crush, Michael, has just moved back to town. The problem is Michael still sees Liz as Little Liz. So she strikes up a deal with the annoying boy next door, Wes, to try and make her appear a bit more grown up in Michael's eyes. So with Liz and Wes having to spend more time together due to the deal, will Liz start to see Wes as anything other than the annoying boy next door? So what are some of the parts that I liked about the book? Every chapter starts off with a famous rom-com movie quote. And as a big rom-com movie fan, this was right up my street. I love that. In addition, if you like films like She's All That, this book is definitely for you. I loved how Liz also made up playlists throughout the song. I love details like that within the book. There's a potential love triangle. Who will Liz choose? It's basically a sweet young adult romance novel. So what were some of the parts I didn't necessarily enjoy about the book? I don't think there's anything major you could seriously dislike about this book. I think it's either going to be to your taste or it's not. Personally, I tend to prefer the more mature side of young adult novels. This is more on the younger side, but obviously it depends on how the books are told. I did find that the annoying boy next door, Wes, was quite annoying, especially at the start. Now, he definitely wasn't my favourite male type of romantic lead, but I know that many others disagree with me. I think he's very popular with other readers. I wasn't expecting the grief in the book. They really did make me quite emotional in parts. I thought it was written really well. Just be aware it might upset you. Here are some of my favourite quotes from Better Than the Movies. there was the screaming fact that shopping with Jocelyn's mum for dresses was just a huge reminder that my mum wasn't there to join us, which made it a wildly unappealing outing. My mother wouldn't be there to take pictures and get teary as her baby attended the final dance of her childhood, and nothing made that hit home quite like seeing Joss's mum do those things for her. To be honest, I hadn't emotionally prepared for the emptiness that seemed to accompany my senior year, the many reminders of my mum's absence. Senior pictures, homecoming, college applications, prom, graduation. As everyone I knew got excited about those high school benchmarks, I got stress headaches because nothing felt the way I'd planned for it to feel. Everything felt lonely. You look best when you're you. Now make sure you've got all the nods to the book before we move on. And so on to book number 4. We have Say You Swear by Meaghan Brandy. Say You Swear is the first book in the Boys of Avix series. Ariana is in love with Chase, and whilst they do have a moment together, it does become clear Chase does not feel the same way. Ariana starts college with her friends, which also includes her brother and Chase, and whilst there she gets to know a boy named Noah. But the question is, will she ever get over Chase, or is Noah just a distraction for the time being? So what are some of the parts I liked about the book? It is a sports college romance. I know those are pretty popular. Noah calls Ariana Juliet, as in Romeo and Juliet. I really liked that. I thought it was really sweet. Noah is a great book boyfriend. I think every girl deserves a Noah Riley in their life. He is definitely a top book boyfriend for me. So what are some of the parts I didn't necessarily like about the book? There are definitely some sad scenes, so you may want to check out the trigger warnings if you think that might upset you. There is a lot of casual swearing in the book, and don't get me wrong, I don't mind the odd bit here and there, but it felt like it was pretty constant in the book, and I found it really annoying. I also kind of felt like the writing was quite immature in general, and also leading on from that, Noah calls Ariana baby, and I hate that as a nickname, as a romantic partner, and I know that is a personal preference, but again, the amount of times it's said, it was seriously annoying. Here are some of my favourite quotes from Say You Swear. If she isn't mine in the end, I'll still be hers. Falling in love with me didn't mean she fell out of love with him. It meant she loved us both. I want her to love me more. Loss forces you to recognise who you can't live without, who you refuse to lose. Loss makes you reckless because loss, it sets you free. Make sure you've got all the nods before we move on. And finally, on to book number 5. We have Indigo Ridge by Denver Perry. Indigo Ridge is book number 1 in the series The Edens. I believe each book focuses on a different member of the Edens family. Winslow, or Win for short, has just been appointed the new chief of police in the town of Quincy, Montana. So she arrives in town and has a one-night stand with Griffin, who turns out to be a member of the founding family. Not ideal, as they have a lot of sway in the town. But when a young woman is found dead on the Edens property, will Win and Griffin work together to stop any further victims? So what are some of my favourite parts of the book? The book actually has quite a lot of different themes, so you've got potential romance, you have the murder mystery, the powerful family, and the police work, etc. I thought the romance between Griffin and Win was actually quite natural and very organic. Griffin is a bit of a grump at the start, he's a commitment phobe, but actually deep down he's a decent guy, and I really liked his character. I really liked Win too. She's trying to prove herself to a town who doesn't feel like she's actually worthy of the role. So here are some of the parts I didn't necessarily enjoy about the book. The book is actually pretty spicy, so if spice is definitely not your thing, you may want to avoid this one. The The murder mystery, if you're expecting a full-on murder mystery, I think you're going to be disappointed. It's actually more subtle and it's more in the background with other subplots as well. Here are some of my favourite quotes from Indigo Ridge. In the absence of clear ambition, serving others is a mighty purpose. And for the first time in a long time, I knew the man holding me tight wouldn't let me fall. Don't take your mind for granted, Griffin, or your heart. They are your gifts, and they are not guaranteed from one day to the next. So now on to the summaries of the books and the big question, whether I will continue on with the series. So first up, we had Divine Rivals. In that book we had romance, war, gods, magical letters. I wasn't a big fan of the war and the god side of the story, and that is a large part of the book. So I was pretty sure I wasn't going to continue on with the series. I did like the writing though, and I really liked the romance, so I rated the book 4 stars. So the big question is, will I continue on with the series? Actually, yes. As stated, although I'm not a big fan of war or god stories in general, I was actually a huge fan of the romance in the book. Plus, there was a bit of a shocking ending, and I need to know what happens. Also, there were parts I had to reread because I was just like really surprised. So now, Ruthless Vows is definitely on my TBR list. So book number 2, we had Twisted Love. Summarised, I'd say this book is quite a smutty book, but with a storyline too. I did almost DNF this book quite a few times, including within the first chapter. Ava is on the phone to her brother, who is obviously having relations. I did almost throw the book down after that because I could see where it was going to go from that opener. In general, I don't tend to DNF books. I am pretty curious because I tend to want to know whether the book's going to get any better, so that's the reason I carried on with the book, and I did end up rating it 2.5 stars. So the big question is, will I carry on with the series? Absolutely not. There is so much about this book that is just not to my personal taste. It's not for me. I'm more on the sunny side of romance books. This is definitely a dark romance. I wasn't a big fan of the spice scenes. They were very graphic and not to my taste. There was a lot of derogatory terms in that, and honestly the scenes made me feel quite icky and horrible after it. I wasn't a big fan of Alex in general. I found his behaviour was very controlling and possessive. That just means I'm not going to continue on with the series, so I did unhaul the rest of the books I had in the series, so I won't be carrying on. Let's hope we have better luck with book number 3, better than the movies. Now, there was a lot about this book that I really liked. I love a good rom-com, and when you add in the rom-com movies and the songs, you're onto a winner with me. However, I wasn't as big a fan of the romance side of it as I thought I would be. I did find Wes was actually pretty annoying, and he definitely wasn't one of my top book boyfriends. I rated the book 4.25 stars. So the big question is, will I continue on with the series? Yes. Now, I do already obviously have the other book to the series, and honestly, I don't know if I would have bought it after this book. I'm not sure if I feel like the book needs a sequel, but I'm going to hold judgment until I have read the book. Say You Swear was the next series I started. I was a really huge fan of the romance in the book, and Noah Riley is definitely at the top of the book boyfriend list for me. Unfortunately, I wasn't as keen on the rest of the book. There is one plot in particular I found quite silly and unrealistic. I rated the book a 3.75 stars. So the big question is, will I continue on with the series? No, I don't really feel the need to carry on the series. Whilst I did really like the romance side, there were too many other things in the book that just wasn't for me. And so on to the final book, we had Indigo Ridge. Indigo Ridge, I felt, had a lot of everything. It had the romance, the murder mystery, a powerful family, an underdog. I found the book was actually quite understated and subtle, and I mean that in a really good way.
Yeah, I forgot to say what I rated the book. I rated Indigo Ridge 4 stars.
So the question is, will I continue on with the series? Yes. I flew through the book in a day, and I was actually really surprised how quickly I got through it. It felt to me like it was a really short book, but it wasn't in particular. Whilst I could have done without some of the spiciness in the book, there's actually a lot more to the book than just that, so I'm intrigued where it's going to go. So were there any surprises in the lineup for you? Were there any that you loved and I didn't, or vice versa? Also, are there any more series you think I should start? Please put them in the comments below. Now, before we go, I'm going to go through the nods of each individual book, but not only that, the universal nods for the theme book series. So for the universal nods, we had the books in general, but not only that, if you've noticed, in the first couple of layers of the bookshelves, they are all book series. They are all the books in the series, apart from the ones I've got on the Kindle of them.
I also forgot to mention the number blocks and the sheep, which all have the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 on them to signify the number of books in a book series.
So for book number 1, which was Divine Rivals, we had these nods. The pen and the paper for the journalist's work, the heart for the romance in the book, the gun to signify the war, and the till. Yes, I know, it's a bit of a stretch, but it was the closest I could find to a typewriter for the letters. So for book number 2, Twisted Love, we had these nods. The hearts for the romance, but the locks because it's a dark romance. The paper and the pen, as Ava is in college. The French fancy as Ava bakes in the book. The camera, as Ava does some part-time modelling in the book. And the car, as Alex picks Ava up in the first chapter of the book in his car. For book number 3, which was better than the movies, we had these nods. The CDs for the playlist mentioned in the book. The DVDs for the rom-com movies mentioned in the book. The heart for the romance. The cat, as Liz has a cat in the book called, wait for it, Mr. Fitzpervert. And the car, as a car parking spot is a bone of contention between Liz and Wes in the book. So for book number 4, So You Swear, the nods we had were the football as the boys play college American football, the heart for the romance, the bonfire as there's one mentioned in the book, Mr. Bump for a particular plotline, and the beach themed items as they have a beach house in the book. So those are the sandcastle, the surfboard and the seaside picture. And finally, for book number 5, which was Indigo Ridge, the nods we had were the magnifying glass for the police work stroke murder mystery, a bird as the first line in the prologue is "Think you'll fly, little bird," and the boots, purse and handbag as they are all significant in the storyline. In addition, we had the glass and ice as the main characters first meet in a bar.
And the heart for the romance.
So did you get all the nods for each book? If you like starting new book series, I think you might like this video here.